There you go. I tried to set it up, Tom, as much as possible.
Okay.
So let's keep our fingers crossed it works. Hi everyone. Sorry for the slight delay. I was fiddling around with some Zoom settings. I think I see everyone on. First of all, thank you for joining this call. Hopefully, this should be a very interesting session. I wanted to quickly introduce Tom. I think the rest of all of you have met in our previous meeting. So Tom, please quickly introduce yourself. And I also shared the bios ahead of the call. So hopefully you had a chance to look at everyone's bio as well. And then I believe we have about 90 minutes for this call. So I really appreciate everyone's flexibility in making this happen. And essentially, Tom will be facilitating this meeting. So I'm just going to hand it over to him shortly. But the idea behind this is really to get a better sense of how we are going to be taking information that is coming from Care Wallet as the family caregivers go through the onboarding process, and then how we're going to be coordinating as a team to run a lot of the deeper in-person counseling sessions, and then make sure that we are, as a team, looking at providing the best and the most effective care plan for the caregivers. With that said, Tom, please take it away.
Yeah, thanks everybody. Hi everybody. Nice to meet you all electronically. I know Robbie wants us to maximize our 90 minutes. So the bios ahead of time are really nice, but it's really helpful to put faces with the stories. So it's nice to meet all of you. I'm a psychologist by background, recently retired from UNE where I ran the aging center, and now I'm self-employed and hiring myself out as a researcher among various other sundry activities. So that's me in a brief nutshell. I live in Portland, and I take it some of you are from different parts of New England, right? Or is everybody in Maine? No? Okay.
Maine.
And same with Allison, I think. Both of them are in Maine. Emily has a Maine connection. Her family's from Maine. But I think outside of that, Emily and um, Jackie, both of them are based in Massachusetts. And then Scott is Maine based.
Well, wonderful. Well, our work together tonight is developmental, I would say. It's part of beginning to think through how the Care Wallet data system interacts with its human partners, and to think about that system in context of a case. So we're going to be talking about Carl and Alice, who you're going to meet over the course of our conversation, and we're going to have a back and forth discussion. So I think we'll get to know each other better as these discussions move forward. We'll start with introductions, and I guess since we've already been introduced in a way, I'm just curious, maybe if anybody wants to share, particularly the second and third questions, I'd be curious what drew you, or why are you drawn to engage with and work with Emtech Care Labs in this project? And then the second question, really, what do family caregivers struggle with, particularly when they're caring for persons with dementia? So anybody want to just share any of your thoughts on these?
Tom, one quick thing, and I just want to share this ahead of time. Just because I'm on this call, please do not censor yourself. Please do not hold back. Share information as you see it, both about Care Wallet as well as all these questions that Tom is raising currently. I won't be offended.
So I can start. My name is Jackie. I'm an occupational therapist. I do a lot of home care, and it's a lot of geriatric home care in the Boston area. And for me, I think that what's drawn me to working with Emtech is, number one, my grandmother had Alzheimer's, and watching my grandfather really struggle to sort of understand how to take care of her. And kind of the disease almost took both of them down in a way, as far as by the time my grandmother had passed, my grandfather was so stressed and sort of, you know, isolated that I think that his life kind of did end when hers did.
Mm.
Um, and just knowing how much of a struggle it was for my mom to help care for him, for both of them, when she was also caring for us as kids, like seeing the strain that that put kind of on that, like, I guess the sandwich generation, I think, is just becoming now our generation as well. Um, and just from a, from a caregiving perspective myself, going into people's homes, often I go in for a short period of time when Medicare allows me to be in there. But then when I leave, I often feel like I'm dropping the bag. Like I don't have that like handoff. Like we do have elder services in the area, but often there's long waiting periods to get on with elder services. And often it's not enough support. And then I just feel like these families either end up spending so much money in private caregiving or they end up putting them in a facility because they just don't have the means or the wherewithal to really support these people as they become, sicker and more confused.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
that's my spiel.
Thanks, Jackie. I'm a caregiver for a father with moderate to severe dementia, and I've walked similar paths and had similar struggles. So thank you. Anybody else want to jump in on these? Yeah, go ahead, Allison.
Hi. Oh, sorry.
Okay. Hi, I'm Allison. Nice to meet you. One of the things that really got me interested in working with Emtech and Care Wallet was just really the ability to provide further access to supportive care throughout the dementia journey or memory care journey. I've worked in a lot of different areas, caring for a lot of different types of patients, whether it's inpatient psych, memory care, skilled nursing, home care, and I think that, and I also took care of my grandfather, helped to take care of him, and he had dementia. So I know what it's like to be a caregiver, but also I think for so many people, what I've seen is that this obviously doesn't come with a book, really. There are people who write books, but you'd have to read 400 million of them because every single person with dementia is different. And so, it's really hard to kind of navigate that, even as somebody who has a lot of knowledge. I've met people who are geriatricians, and now all of a sudden they're taking care of mom with dementia or with advanced Alzheimer's, and they don't know what to do. And here's somebody who does this for a living, and when it comes to themselves and their family, it's really hard. So I think providing families, access to these types of supports. I know we're starting in Maine, but I'd love to see that branching out. I think there's so many people that don't have access to this type of service. And also financially, Jackie was talking a little bit about, Medicare and about like elder services and things like that. But I think about my own parents who are like middle to upper class who, yes, they might have a little bit of Medicare benefit, but they wouldn't qualify for a lot of the lower income benefits. So I feel like there's just this gap where you have people who are doing very financially well, who can hire, caregivers privately, and they're not really feeling that financial strain. And then you have people who are lower income who may get some benefits, generally not enough, who are feeling that financial strain. And then you have these people in the middle who are kind of left out. And I really feel like this is a nice bridge, really for everyone, and providing that access to services.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate those comments. I like that word bridge.
Mhm.
Emily, you were jumping in right when Allison was jumping in. You want to go next?
Yeah. I was drawn to this partly because when I worked at a state-funded home care agency here in Massachusetts right after not right after grad school, but soon after grad school. And one of my jobs was the family caregiver support specialist. And just they would come to this agency just not even knowing where to start. And I also like Allison's use of the word bridge, because it feels like there isn't a bridge right now for caregivers. And like, we did all we could, or it felt like we did, to kind of put the word out there that there are these agencies, there are these state agencies, there are senior services and municipalities, there are resources out there, but when you're in the midst of caregiving, it's hard to think of where to go, where to start, what to do. So I was drawn to this because I felt like it was a good connection to what is out there. Where do you go from there? At the agency I worked for, we did create a caregiver notebook, which is similar to what the wallet does, and it puts everything all in one place, but it's on paper. So I like that this is more computerized and you can update it a little more easily. And I think that that's going to be helpful when caring for an older adult who might have dementia or any other chronic disorder that makes it difficult to know what to do day to day. But now there's a place where somebody can go and look and say, oh, this is where I found some resources. And there are some people at the end of it who can talk to me and help me through thinking about decisions and what to do next.
Gotcha. Thank you. And so, Scott, you're our physician, I know, in the group. You're last. What do you have anything you want to add?
Yeah, sure. Well, Bev may want to add something after me, but yeah,
Oh,
thanks
Bev,
very
I'm
much.
sorry. I apologize.
No. It's all good. Yeah, I'm a general internist. I work for the VA as my day job, but I've always been very much interested in taking advantage of digital tools. And after 20 something years of watching older patients slowly get into dementia and then seeing their family struggling, this was just a huge gap. That idea of the bridge is excellent too. I'm going to run with it a little bit more to talk about the transitions between our healthcare sites, whether it's a hospital with a pneumonia that really unmasks the patient's problems, and then the family is kind of left holding the bag after 3 weeks of Medicare home care, trying to piece it all together, and it's really, really overwhelming. So this is I met Arby through the Rue Institute as one in her founder's residency, I guess almost 2 years ago now, and I think it's just a fantastic opportunity to help these families with their generally elderly patients. And as I told her before, this is the most complicated bucket of patients. So we're doing God's work, and if we can make a go of it as a business, all the better, right?
Great, thank you. And Bev, now, last but not least, I'm sorry I overlooked you. You're all tiny on my screen, but I want to.
Oh, sorry.
Up,
Here I am. So, yeah, I'm Bev. I'm an RN, and the last third of my career I've spent in home care and hospice. And again, like everyone else, has seen so many different families and clients just struggling to put it all together and get the resources that they need. I actually saw Arby on TV a year or so ago. And at that time, I thought, what a wonderful product this and service this would be for people. And lo and behold, here it is a year or so later, and she's here right on my screen. It's just unbelievable, like meant to be. But I just think this is such a comprehensive program that will help supply those resources and education and counseling to the overwhelmed families that we deal with every single day. And I did take care of my mom with Parkinson's dementia for the last 3 years of her life in our home, and know personally how difficult that is, even being a healthcare provider, how much more difficult it is being a regular just lay person who doesn't have access or knowledge of those resources.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. No. I hear you, and I'm very much there myself. Well, thank you all. I think we have a really nice group for this conversation. So just a little bit more about my role. So I met Robbie through a mutual friend linked through Rue. And as we got to talking, I asked her some very challenging questions because she's not the new kid on the block in this space. There have been many, many efforts over the years to create these kind of platforms, and I've pointed out some to her. And I think, although I kind of beat her up a little bit verbally with some of my tough questions and criticisms, I think what it developed was a really nice rapport and trust between us. And so I agreed to come on board as sort of a devil's advocate, maybe to some extent as a researcher. And we're treating this as this is focus group light today, basically. We're talking to the people that already know the product in all of you, but it's a first step to try to bring some structure to thinking about the CareWallet system and how it bridges into the real world, because that's where we're at. I've been in the behind the scenes suggesting edits to the system, and I'll continue to do that. I'm also assisting Arabi in creating hopefully a contract with the Humane Center on Aging, where I have connections to do the first formal research study to show efficacy for this platform. So that's kind of where we are. So you're helping in that part of it. So I chose the picture of an onion intentionally. So we're going to get to know Carl and Alice in layers together, and we're going to pause and discuss. No idea, no question, no issue is too cockamamie. So just share what you think. As we go, I would love it if you would use the chat either to ask questions, to suggest ways of thinking about the case. We're going to look at a case together that's more rich than simply what's entered to CareWallet. So there are a number of spaces in the CareWallet system now where someone can type a narrative, so paragraphs about their situation and story. That's a tough thing to get many people to do. So we're going to talk about that, the tension between data and knowing the person, and then the outputs today. As we work through the case together, we're going to try, I think, to develop what we consider as a group a care plan or components of a care plan. And I'll be asking you later, we're going to take up 10-minute pause, and you're going to use the notes feature to type some of your ideas toward a care plan. Then we're going to look at the output that this case generated in CareWallet, and we're going to be kind, but we're going to be critical, because this is really where the rubber hits the road. And if we cannot translate the richness of the story into a set of action steps that make sense and can carry a person forward, then why do it? Any questions about the plan? Make sense? I see some nods. I've been a college professor most of my career, so I really benefit from nods. Thank you. Or thumbs up. So let's meet Carl and Alice. So Carl is 75. He's a retired corporate attorney. They live in a single family home that they own outright in South Portland. His wife, Alice, she's a retired secretary. And Carl retired at 67 from his law work, where he had been a partner. So just that simple little bit, anything you want to think about or share based upon that first little snippet about these two? Any hypotheses you have or assumptions? All right, hearing none. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say they retired kind of young.
Okay, retired kind of young. What? And we might be able to make some economic assumptions too, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Allison, were you going to say something else?
I was going to say that as well. I think that we do make a lot of assumptions when we hear somebody's been, they've been, retired as a lawyer from a law firm, and they retired early, and maybe they have money and enough, and they can afford to pay private caregivers and all these things. So I think people's minds jump to that, but the thing is that that's not always the case. So
Right.
you can never assume.
Right. I have an uncle who fits this almost exactly, who never saved for retirement. And when his law career ended, he was like, oh, I've got to sell my house to survive. So, yeah. So, so I'm a psychologist. I'm always sort of like, when working with a family, I'm trying to assess, and I'm making guesses, and I'm trying to get data then to support my guesses or direct me in a different direction. That's kind of where we're at now. So Carl was a primary breadwinner and money manager for the family. They have one son, Ronan, who's a stockbroker in New York, has 2 kids. Ronan actually is divorced. They've got many friends in Maine. and they are part of a non-denominational Christian church. Carl has a single brother who lives in Bangor. Otherwise, these two don't have lots of other kind of close family relationships. It really is these two. Carl served on various nonprofit boards. Early in his retirement, also volunteered as a mentor for young entrepreneurs, something he just loved. But things changed a few years ago. Alice noticed he just seemed less interested, more withdrawn, less enthusiastic. 2 years ago, he stopped doing their taxes, which he had always done himself, and hired it out, but continued to do the daily, the bill pay and that kind of stuff. But he quit his volunteer role, saying they're just not fun any longer and they involve too much brain work. So with this longer vignette, what kind of things are coming to mind? What are some of your hypotheses about this couple?
He's starting to struggle with maybe some cognitive functions or depression, maybe that things that he used to be enjoying, he's no longer enjoying.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So we have a hypothesis that he could be depressed. We have another hypothesis that he could be experiencing cognitive change.
I've got to
Anything else?
go. I've got to go to the clinical. Hopefully he's got a decent primary care source and that he doesn't have any medical problems that are impacting how he's living right now.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And we're going to get to the medical history shortly.
Yeah.
Allison, were you going to say something else?
Well, one of the things that I picked up from some of this story is that because he was the, money manager and the person doing all of these things, that it may be a little bit hard as he's not able to do this anymore. And it seems like this may be an area that Alice may need some support in.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, because if she may have to step up is certainly the potential. All right, let's keep going with the story. So here's some more details. They're both fully, oops, boy, that was a mistake. Let's go backward. Yeah, I leaned on my keyboard, which, there we go. So they're independent in ADLs and IADLs. There's no obvious difficulty. They drive, they have one car. She manages the household inside. He maintains the outside. So a very common split. They're a Zoom adept from the pandemic and have actually received some healthcare online. So they have that capability. His health history is significant for late onset diabetes and longstanding hypertension. He's also obese. Alice worries Carl is in the early stages of hearing loss because that's an issue that his father had in his later years. Because she sees him having difficulty following conversations and recalling. Carl also had a fall while mowing the lawn, and he hit his head on the mailbox that required a bunch of stitches on the side of his head. We don't know about loss of consciousness with that part of the story, but it was a significant fall. Her health history includes degenerative joint disease, particularly impacting her spine, arthritis, so she's got some chronic pain and mobility issues. She relies on Carl to help with heavy household tasks. She's mobile but slowing down and struggles to climb more than a single flight of stairs. Their laundry's in the basement. Carl's got to carry the stuff up and down because she cannot do that. Any other new thoughts coming to mind from this?
It seems like together they're maybe doing what appears to be doing okay. But if something were to happen to either one of them, they would definitely need, and I am even advocating for it now, they need some help. If she's having difficulty going up and down stairs, are they needing to start thinking about any adjustments within their home? And if he's, having these health issues, is this maybe leading to what he's feeling, his those depression type symptoms, or not feeling interested anymore? Is that so? I think at this point I'm wondering if a trip to the doctor's office would be helpful, and just thinking about, or at least starting to think about, any services that might be helpful within the home.
Mhm. When you're thinking about trip to the doctor's office, do you have a particular specialty you'd suggest?
Well, I was kind of thinking at this point, um, possibly, I would say definitely their general care doctor, just to make sure their basic health is okay, but maybe also, if they're going through these changes, there could be some, kind of mental health issues going on. And, if he's struggling with conversations and following conversations, does he need to see a hearing loss doctor?
Mhm.
And maybe potentially, if it's not hearing, could it be, you know, cognitive issues?
Or
Mhm.
neurological.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have a number of hypotheses on the table here. Yeah, so with the vignette, he's not been evaluated for his hearing loss. It's just something the wife is suspecting. That's certainly an option here. Any
Tom?
other? Go ahead.
Do we know what type of home they have, or is that coming later?
Haven't described it other than to say that the laundry's in the basement, but it's a 2-story single-family home in a South Portland neighborhood.
Okay.
So it has a yard to maintain, has a garage.
And a second story.
And a second story.
They don't have.
And their bedroom is on the second floor.
Okay.
Where are the bathrooms?
So there's one half bath on the first floor and a full bath with tub shower on the second floor. So 1.5 bath, but not a walk-in shower, tub shower.
Mhm.
Okay. Any other thoughts on the case before we move on?
They seem like they're pretty isolated as far as having close family in the area that could really step in and like help them, or like really be seeing that those ADLs and IADLs are going well. And sometimes from what I see, people that describe things as going well, when you watch them walk downstairs backwards holding laundry, or doing laundry the way maybe they've always done, but you see it as kind of a risk that maybe both of them could be at risk for more falls, just based on how proud and how they're just doing this things that they've always done the same way. Always done them.
Right.
And I don't know if he had like a CT scan or anything when he had the fall, to see if there's any type of, injuries to his brain that could have then accounted for some of those mental health changes that he was having. Sometimes concussions can also lead to depression or withdrawal, or needing like that low stimulus environment. I also think of neuropathy when I think of diabetes, and just, he's walking on grass and that's uneven. And sometimes that can also lead to sort of more falls.
Yeah, these are really good points. Yeah, let's just say for sake of discussion, there has not been, it's a 1950s bungalow. Been updated, but it's not been looked at by an OT or other professional with respect to aging in place. So that's something that's currently unexplored. Okay, let's keep going. So Alice initially chalked up Carl's withdrawal to some mild depression, but didn't think much of it. His father had some depression in late life too, and it didn't impact his quality of life. He's just dealing with aging and finding himself, she'd like to say. But not now. Something is different in the past few months. Our first inkling of a big problem was when a debt collector called saying their credit card bill was months overdue. She questioned Carl about it, who claimed it must have been a mistake, as he knows he paid it recently. Not 2 weeks later, their electricity suddenly went out. She called and learned their bill hadn't been paid in 6 months. So we're peeling the onion. Does this change any of your hypotheses or thoughts so far? Any comments?
Well, it seems that it's becoming a little more pressing to actually take some action, or to put some plans in place to figure out what's going on here. Alice is likely becoming much more worried about the whole situation and how she's going to be able to manage, because he's obviously he's not able to do it. as well as he once did.
Mhm.
And also could be starting some, you know, maybe some, I could see some anger or some resentment going both ways between Carl and Alice as far as, but you told me you did this, but I did do that. Like he thinks he really did, but it obviously didn't. And now it's kind of needing to be dealt with. And maybe Alice needs to start taking over some of the stuff that she's never done before, which then causes more sort of, you know,
Mhm.
anger and
Exactly.
resentment.
So there's the possibility of friction for sure in this story. We're starting, I think, with the way the story is moving, it's starting to become a little more concerning from the perspective of cognitive change,
Mhm.
because clinical depression alone would not cause this type of failure unless it's inanition. But given his history, we think this is somebody who's been, pretty much on top of this stuff, certainly in the past. So let's keep peeling this onion. So Alice also noticed various boxes arriving in Carl's name. These went to his study where he stored them in a closet. She thought these were related to one of his hobbies. He loved making model ships and airplanes in the past. One day when Carl was out getting a haircut, Alice looked in the closet. Most of the boxes were sealed. Those that were opened contained an assortment of male potency pills, unusual health supplements, and various odd items such as knife sets and collectible coins. She also found a few dozen Apple iTunes cards with their code numbers exposed, indicating they had been redeemed. She was confused and worried at the same time. Also during this period in his behavior, she noticed an increase in repetition and forgetfulness for recent events. She had attributed this to hearing loss in the past, but now she wonders what's going on. Other wrinkles that you're noticing in this story, things that concern you.
The secrecy and hiding things.
Mhm.
That it's totally different hobbies that he wasn't doing before.
Mm-hmm.
I think also this could be a sign where he maybe kind of knows something's going on, because why else buy health supplements or male potency pills? So maybe he knows there's something going on, but can't quite name it or really say what it is.
Mm-hmm.
And with the repetition of stories and forgetfulness, he's maybe not even sure how to express it to his wife. And it could be, as we mentioned, pride too. So hiding it in the closet to maintain his dignity and feeling like he's still independent and able to do things.
Mm-hmm. Anybody see financial exploitation in this story?
I was thinking scams with the iTunes cards and their code numbers exposed.
Yeah, it's a common scam where folks call and build some confidence. Maybe it's offering a service like I'll remote in and fix your computer, but you have to pay me in iTunes cards.
Mhm.
So okay, let's keep going. So Ronan's concerned for his father and he's supportive of his mother, but he's unsure how to proceed. He's in New York, he doesn't see them that often. James doesn't recognize a problem with Carl, who sounds like his normal self on the phone. So James is the brother. The same is true for people at their church and other friends. Carl is gregarious and he's able to rise to the occasion. But Alice is seeing the behavioral change, particularly at home, and she's kind of feeling alone and I would say probably vulnerable. She sees an ad for Care Wallet and decides to give it a try with Ronan's support and assistance. She participates with Ronan in an orientation. They enter their background data and recent narrative. And they typo there. They look forward to meeting with the care manager soon. Maybe if I take over the finances and we develop a good plan, everything will be fine, Alice says to Ronan. Carl is aware of this, but uninterested. You do what you think best, honey. Other thoughts about the story?
It sounds to me kind of like maybe we're kind of leading up to this anyway, but early signs of dementia where people can still present well in front of friends and family,
Mhm.
since he's, his brother says he sounds normal, and people at church don't notice a change at this time, or they're not mentioning it anyway.
Mhm.
So I think this is a good time actually for them to start asking. Well, every time is a good time to start asking once you start noticing changes, but it's a good time to reach out and see what support is out there. And
Mhm.
I'm
So,
glad Ronan is.
It
yeah.
also seems that Alice is at this point kind of ready and willing to
Mhm.
take over some of those responsibilities that he once had, and trying to transition it so that it's not going to be offensive to Carl.
Yeah, so you've got, on the plus side here, you've got a spouse who's seeing the issues and seems motivated to do something. We've got a son who's trying to be supportive, but maybe not entirely sure. And of course, he's at a distance. And at least we have Carl's assent. You do what you think best, honey, but does he really understand
Right.
the implications of seeking more this kind of formal support? Something else I'll mention, well, the issue of him being an attorney, attorneys are very good at communicating. And so, he comes from a profession where maybe he can hide it and fake it. Also, we have a situation here too where no one's been declared incompetent. There's not been any capacity. There's no power of attorney that's been defined. And so Carl is still, by any measure, independent and able to make his own decisions. At least that's kind of where they're at least legally. But we might question whether he's able to make those complex decisions, given the story that we're getting. So there's the first question, is Care Wallet, I'm going to give you a few more backstory bits, but is Care Wallet an appropriate vehicle for Alice to understand what's going on and develop reasonable plans for the future? Remember, our Robbie said you can be critical. Nice. Critical, but nice.
I think we would need to have him evaluated by a prime, or we would have to, like, we don't have a diagnosis or anything. So I feel like the first step would really be them seeking like a primary care appointment, where maybe they do check labs and make sure B12 is okay, and make sure that there's no urinary tract infection or any like acute reason for sort of like a mental status change.
Mm-hmm.
And then maybe from there, like that would be a referral to like a neuropsychiatrist, or for some more sort of more intensive testing. Because I mean, without knowing that it is dementia, we can't diagnose. We can't, I mean, we can certainly give ideas of how to make things safer, but I feel like that would be something that the sooner you get a diagnosis, it kind of opens up more options, or you kind of know what you're planning for, bigger picture, I guess.
So diagnostic clarity is a prerequisite to care planning. Is that what you're saying?
I think so, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
I would piggyback on that. I think it's incredibly important. I mean, he could have a brain tumor,
Yeah.
he could have anything going on. Maybe the reason why he fell in the yard and hit his head wasn't because of his possible neuropathy in his feet. Maybe his hypertension, maybe he's having something else going on. Maybe he's been having TIAs. I mean, we're not really sure what the reason is, and I think that that's really important. Yes, is Care Wallet appropriate? Yes, I do believe it's appropriate, but I also think that we might need a little bit more information, just so that we know that we can rule some things out. Just because we want to be able to be supportive of Alice and be able to point her in the right direction and give her the right supports that she needs. So we want to make sure that let's get all the medical stuff out of the way, check off those boxes. Okay, it's none of these other things. Okay, great. Here's this care plan. Let's look at all the different areas that you need help with.
Mm-hmm. Go ahead.
I also think it is appropriate, not just so that kind of similar to what Allison was saying, we can be that helpful source of, he seems kind of okay with her going into this and getting what she can out of it. We don't know what he will say if she says, hey, let's go see your doctor. We don't know if he'll be argumentative or if he says, no, I'm fine, I don't need anything. So I think where Care Wallet can be helpful, especially the care management part of it, is helping her have that conversation in a way that will hopefully lead him to a doctor. You know, if we can find those magic words to help him agree to go, sometimes that's the hardest part.
Yeah.
So maybe a supportive coaching almost role, you
Mhm.
know, this is the big picture as we see it.
Mhm.
How does it fit with what you see? And maybe this is the first step going through that evaluative process to really understand what you're dealing with. Anybody else have a comment on that? So Care Wallet in this context is both a digital information system, takes in information, looks for patterns and makes suggestions, but there's also a human part of the system. All of you are the human part of this system. I'm curious about where the balance is in this for this kind of case. I'm hearing that both are equally important. That there needs to be a way to collect the story in a coherent way to understand it, but it's more than just a computer algorithm making a list. It's translating that list in ways that this person can hear and understand and act on. Is that fair?
Mhm. Yes.
Although I'm not the one that's supposed to be doing all the talking, so I'll shut up. Any other thoughts about this? If Care Wallet was purely digital, and the human aspect, your aspect, were not here, what would that mean in this case? Or could that mean?
I think it kind of makes it like every other website out there, you know, like Caring for Mom, you can get a bunch of resources online. I think what helpful with the human input is you get that supportive piece of, okay, now I have these resources, what do I do next? And helping come up, as we're doing through this, with coming up with an action plan. What are the next steps? And beyond the next steps, what are the next steps after those next steps? If, you know, we're looking at big picture, we're looking at what we need immediately, but then also what are we going to need in the future? What are the resources and where can they find them?
And a personal connection with an actual human being is so important with rather than just having data on a screen.
Yeah.
Yeah. Certainly something we learned with older adults during the pandemic. Yeah. Scott, I'm going to pick on you because you've been kind of quiet.
Oh, well, first I want to say that piece that Bev mentioned, Alice is really gonna need some help, and having even a digital organizer that she can refer to. So many couples like this, they just keeping track of the information is completely overwhelming. So but and the point is, in this case, we don't have enough information quite yet. There's some real key clinical pieces that are going to help us hopefully use Care Wallet to get Alice and Carl moving, helping them manage.
Yeah, I will say, as I filled it out, I found it overwhelming, and my parents are doing pretty well at the moment. So it's nice to have that friendly person to talk to at the end. So almost makes it worth going through it. Like, oh, I did all that. I put all this together. Now what? And then having somebody say, okay, great, this looks good. This gives us a place to start and move forward.
So next thing is who's the client? So Alice is the client in a way that she read, and maybe Ronan, because they've registered for the service. And while she has Carl's assent, he's not particularly interested in joining with her, let's say. we've already touched on this question in the thinking all of you have done. Can Care Wallet be a meaningful service for Alice, maybe without it being as direct a service for Carl?
Yes, definitely.
100%.
Sure.
I think
Yeah.
so.
Yeah.
How is that then?
So as far as like she's got degenerative joint disease and she's really been relying on her husband to do a lot of the heavy lifting around the house and she hasn't really done the bills before. So just as far as being able to support her and trying to find some of these services that might be able to send in a homemaker or how do we plan a budget or how do we support you to support your husband being home, like kind of Carl might not be the actual client, but Alice's role as a caregiver then kind of in a way if his disease does progress and he does get worse. So kind of opens up the door there to sort of help her and educate her on how to become the caregiver.
Mm-hmm.
One thing I talk to caregivers about is taking care of yourself
Mm-hmm.
so that you can take care of the person you're caring for. And so I think that would be the case here is, putting that airplane mask on yourself before putting it on Carl. And once she's kind of in a better place to care for herself, maybe that will kind of help open the doors to how Carl, and since they live together, he'll see the services she's getting. And maybe that might open the doors for him to be a little more accepting or more willing to receive any help for himself.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe that's wishful thinking of a social worker.
Well, what I'm hearing then is that idea that we need an evaluation and a diagnosis could actually be set aside for a little bit,
Mm-hmm.
conceivably. If we think about really Alice is the one in need here, and Alice is the person we're supporting her in her role to be successful, but perhaps not influencing Carl's care as directly as we might in getting him to an evaluative sort of space. So if you had a chance to interview Alice, what kind of questions might you come up with based on this story? What's eating at you?
Are the lights on yet?
Lights on, yeah. The lights are back on, yeah.
Okay.
She paid the bill.
What things are you struggling with around the house that
Mhm.
you need to be able to do to stay safe and to kind of keep the household rolling?
Mm-hmm.
Do you get any, like maybe they already get services? How do you get your groceries? Do you do like a delivery? Do you have someone drive you?
I think I would ask her what her kind of turn the question around on her. What are her priorities? What are her goals?
Mhm.
What's most important to her to start with? Again, trying to look at what's the crisis, what's the immediate need, where do we start with our short-term goals, and then, kind of looking at our long-term goals after we start working on those.
I was going to say the same thing, Emily, and that we just really need to meet her where she is and go from there.
Mm-hmm. So, understanding the immediate context, making sure they're both safe, and then kind of working from there to then prioritize. Go. Let's try this one. So you've been talking about this, but based on what you know so far, if you wanted to list out a top 3, these are the things I would want to know or do first. I mean, you've been sort of talking about this already, but anybody want to add anything here?
Seems like they want to get a handle on the his financial hemorrhaging, whatever he's buying, and yeah, that's got to be dealt with.
Yeah.
And the rest of the bank accounts and all the general logistics.
Yeah. What skeletons are in the closet that you don't know about yet?
Yeah, I think getting a financial POA, obviously he can make a lot of his own decisions currently. So, but having somebody take over the finances, whether it be the son or whether it be the wife, but having a financial POA, so that just taken out of his hands. So it's probably stressing him out, and he just doesn't really know how to talk about it or doesn't want to talk about it. Because something that he did for so long independently. One of the things that I always really like to touch on when I'm working with families, I think that we often are people are often telling you what's wrong and the things that they're having a hard time with. So one of the things that I like to do is constantly bring back, well, tell me a little bit about your marriage, or where did you meet, and what are the things that you've always loved to do together, and what are you finding that you can still do together, or tell me some of the things that you're having a challenge with, and kind of set some priorities for them to be able to do some things together that to help both people feel a little bit normal and have that relationship feel a little bit normalized, especially for the caregiver. So whether it's that he can still take walks or that they go out for coffee or whatever have you, I think just always making sure that we're looking at what what are the things that that are still going well, and helping her focus on those too, because we can get so much into the problems. And I think that that's where the human piece comes in, because like AI could look at their story and suggest the top 3 things that they should work on, right? But the AI wouldn't be able to, think about those types of things. And I think that's really important as a caregiver in terms of connection and connecting with that, continuing to connect with that person as that person is becoming different.
Right. So the lifelong strengths and assets have just as much value as any
Yes.
problems or deficits. And thank you for bringing that up. It's really easy in these stories to fall into that, no offense, medical model way of thinking in terms of symptoms and diagnosis, and forget that bigger life context, that this is a couple with a long narrative. There may have been rocky times in their past they've gotten through. So you can harness those latent strengths, hopefully, to make a difference. So yeah, I think that's really important. Okay, so some of the other details, these are in quickie. I'm not going to read these. I'm going to let you look at them, see if there's anything that jumps out at you. Quite a bit of it's already been alluded to. His veteran status is new. Has life insurance, but no long-term care. We don't know much about the other forms of income. More of the driving is falling on Carl because Alice doesn't like to. Another common story. Got a few more here. Yeah, Pat says something else that's new. And when Carl did fall in the yard, she couldn't help him up. She had to get some help from a neighbor. So these additional details, do they add to your thinking? They change your thinking? They make you think of something else?
I'm wondering about veteran benefits, whether there's like a VA adult day health center or a VA place to just kind of socialize, or even for medical and psychological purposes. The other thing, when he fell and they got a neighbor to help get up, why didn't they call 911? Was it because a lot of times it's ambulance, fire, and police, and it's a big show in the neighborhood, or just more comfortable with the neighbor?
I think it was good that Alice didn't try to help him up, because I have plenty of people that would have just tried to help their husband up and then get in trouble themselves. I definitely think the VA would be something to look into. A lot of times equipment can be covered. They have different like lifelines and stuff that can be covered through VA. They also have different homemakers depending on how involved he was. That, you know, you can qualify for a certain amount of hours per week or days per week to have someone come in and help around the house. It's not easy to access, but you can do it. I've definitely had some people set up with it.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Okay. Are there other details we don't know that you'd like to know? So we've certainly touched on a number of them in our conversation earlier. I don't want to belabor this, but anything else come to mind that you'd like to know?
I'd like to, I think, know a little bit more about the relationship with the son. Um, is he helpful? Is he in New York and just appearing to be helpful? Does he, what can he do? What does he want to do?
Mm-hmm.
What is he willing to do?
Yeah. How much of a support is he for his mother in this situation? Right. Right. Anything else? All right. So what I'd like to do, we're going to do we'll say up to 10-minute pause. I'll stop sharing. I'd like you to activate, use the chat box, and I would like you not think from your own perspective. Obviously, we've developed some care plan elements in our conversation, but if you were the one going in to communicate with this couple about what's going on and what needs to happen, I'd like you to take a minute and this is sort of part of our research, quote unquote, to have your thoughts and prioritization. So when you're in the chat, obviously, as people hit return and enter it, you'll see what they're saying. Try to focus on what you're saying. But just take some notes in sort of priority order, what you think a care plan should or may include in terms of maybe stepwise. Do this first, do this second, do this third. And if you want to include any additional notes about that. Make sense? So we'll go ahead. I'm going to go ahead and mute myself.
Whoops.
Yeah, if you hit the return key, you're going to end up
Yep.
submitting. No, don't worry about it. We'll string it together later. I appreciate everybody taking this seriously. Thank you. I'm going to give you 2 more minutes. So if you want to continue to type into the chat, you're very welcome. We're down to 25 minutes left in our meeting, and I want to make sure that we make use of our time as wisely as we can. So one of the issues that Arabi and I have talked about before this meeting, and we've been actually private chatting while you've been working. If we look at Care Wallet simply as a data entry portal for the care context, we get a lot of factual information. So we'll know that Alice is the caregiver, but we might not know Alice's level of worry. We might not know the nuances around what she found in the closet and all those boxes. And a question I have before we actually look at what Care Wallet spits out, because that's our next step. How do you, let's say you're coming in, you've got a bunch of information on a bunch of sheets of paper that you printed, and now you're coming in to do that next follow-up and present the ideas that Care Wallet developed. How do you get the richness? Or is there a way that Care Wallet can get the richness of Carl and Alice's story before you get there as the personal professional?
Do you want it in the chat or just as us to talk? I think it's really, really hard to get the richness without having a conversation with someone.
Yeah.
There's just so much that does not get between the black and white lines when somebody is telling a story or putting things on paper, because they don't know what they're supposed to be thinking about. And even though the system has a certain level of questions, it, you know, for myself, doing so much home care, like when you were sitting, all of us as professionals, when we're in front of someone, we're picking up on so much more, you know, so much of communication, you know, a huge amount of communication is listening. And we don't just listen by hearing words, you know, we're seeing the person, we're seeing the body language, how's the person reacting, feeling those emotions. And I think that that is something that gets really lost, you know, with us. Something could get lost without the human piece with Care Wallet.
Right. Yeah. I fully get that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Other thoughts? Do others agree with that?
Definitely. Yeah. Yeah, that human interaction is, I think, really key to putting it all together. Yeah, and understanding and clarifying what we find in the data in the Care Wallet.
So I'm going to ask, Robbie, I'm going to have you join the conversation, ask you a question. So in terms of onboarding and orientation, is there an opportunity for someone to tell their story, even if not in depth, to give a sense of the emotional gravity, the level of concern and fear, the, you know, just something that sort of makes the data come alive, but from the beginning of the process?
Yeah, I think a couple of different ways. I think it's very hard for someone to tell their story if you just give them, like, just ask them, okay, what's happening? I think they're not going to know where to start. So one thing that can be done right now, the onboarding process for Care Wallet is fairly involved and has a lot of questions. But it is the expectation we've had so far is we would just have the individual go through it on their own. One thing that can be done is, other than some very basic information specific to health or specific to anything that is somewhat of an assessment, it can actually be done, the onboarding process itself can be done with the help of a care manager who, as the individual or the caregiver, sees the questions, they can actually help them think through that question.
Mhm.
So a question like, are they able to get rest? Sorry, maybe that's not a good example here. On the financial side, are they able to manage the finances? Something like that right now is limited to just a certain set of options in the question and the drop-down list that they get. But the nuance is in the details. So when asking that question, the care manager who may be guiding them through the onboarding can actually extract more information by prompting them with more questions. And then it has to be a little bit of a piecemeal approach, I think, because you have to touch on many different topics, and each one may give you one more snippet or insight into that, into Carl or Alice in this case as well. I think it's very hard to get them to just tell the story outside. That'll be my take on it, but happy to hear what everyone else thinks.
I agree. I have people come into my office, and if I just say, "Hey, how can I help you today?" It's crickets. Whereas if I say, "Oh, over the phone, you mentioned that you need some help with budgeting. Let's talk about how that's working for you," and then that can start the conversation. So, and that's where I think Care Wallet can be very helpful, is you have the questions there, and maybe it just needs a little more prompting or a different way to look at a question to really get a full answer to it. And I was thinking about the finance thing because my dad started showing my mom how he's done the finances all these years, because she's never done it either. And I'm like, I'm so glad that they're finally doing it together. And hopefully that'll be helpful in the future.
Okay. Well, let's go back to slides, and let's look at the output and talk about the output from Care Wallet and how you would interpret and expand that output if you were meeting with Alice and Ronan. So, of course, the first pages of the report that Care Wallet provides are just factual. They provide a repeat of the stuff that was entered for context. And so as you move into the report, you begin to see some of the specific care recommendations. So one of the issues I'm curious about here is how your prioritization, your concerns professionally, particularly from the different disciplines that you come from, how they interact with what we see in Care Wallet. So, and Arabi, because this is really your space, I don't mind leading the conversation, but please be part of it. So we have our first bucket represented on screen here, care support. And I'm curious what you think as you, can anybody read this well enough? I hope you can. Okay. So we didn't talk explicitly in our backstory about Carl necessarily being worried about falling, but certainly Alice would be worried. So fall risk and certainly the implications of a new fall and what they could mean for this couple seems to be an area that has a real concern. What else do you notice on this list in terms of it matching the story we've developed together? Does everything here make sense? Stuff that you think that maybe doesn't, or you would want changed?
I think it matches pretty much what we've already discussed.
Mhm.
The new piece of information was that he may be skipping medications. I don't think we touched on that earlier.
Mhm.
So that's good.
Okay.
And the house taxes not being paid. I know other things have been discussed, but I'm not sure, was it the house taxes? Were those part of what he?
Yeah, those weren't mentioned earlier,
Oh,
but
sorry, I just want to point out one thing. This is how Alice responded. So the care notes and instructions, what you're saying is wherever based off the question, Alice responded, "Oh, I'm worried about this." So these
Okay.
are in a way Alice's words.
Mhm.
The reason this may look different is because back in the case, it was a more well like put together case. Here is just pieces of information coming at you in different pockets.
Right.
Mm.
Yeah.
So here, Robbie, would you explain the first page on the left? It's obviously making a specific suggestion
Yeah.
for caregiver respite support.
So this is based off of how Alice responded the questions around cognitive changes that she's noticing. So if there are cognitive changes, the system automatically connects her or matches her with resources that could possibly be of help. So in this case, even though there is no dementia diagnosis, if there's a formal dementia diagnosis, this will make a lot more sense. But in this case, there is a potential suspicion that there is some type of oversight that Alice may need to provide, meaning she has to be more watchful of what Call is doing, and hence she may need some type of respite.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how the system is picking up those connections. And the idea here is it's giving her insight into there is a possible resource for her that is accessible through the elder care locator, which is the local aging agency for Alice and Carl,
Mm-hmm.
where she might be able to get this type of respite care support.
Mm-hmm.
I have a quick question. Is that going to be the only resource that's automated like that?
For now, all of the resources are tied to the aging agencies. There are some, maybe a handful, that are more on the financial and legal side that we haven't activated yet because we wanted to confirm before we release those.
Okay.
But yeah, most of these are tied to aging agencies, at least from an automated system perspective.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so I have the benefit of being in Portland, and this case is occurring in South Portland. So I can think of a number of local organizations, Southern Maine Agency on Aging being one, that would offer various layers of service for a family like this. So the ability of the system to link truly local is important, I think. I'm curious though, Robbie, in terms of the professional panel we have here, how much is that going to be part of the service rollout? Will refinement happen as Emily or Bev or Jackie or Scott or Allison interpret the report and tailor it to the person?
Yeah, so this actually, in this particular case, all of these are pointing to the services provided by the Southern Maine Agency on Aging, because it's specific to the location they're in.
Mm-hmm.
The piece, and again, this is right now a little bit of a roster of all of the things that could possibly help Alice. Where the care managers can dive in deeper is help Alice get to what are the things that she might need immediately. Maybe not all of that is important. Some of this is captured by the system, but some maybe even be missing from the system. For example, the conversation around prompting or encouraging Call to see the physician.
Mm-hmm.
That is not in the system right now because we don't know the dynamic there. So those are the areas where the care managers can dig deeper and figure out what is the hurdle that Carl and Alice is facing, and how can that be navigated. And then the other is, maybe she doesn't need respite care now, but it's possible she's going to need respite care down the road. So that's, even though that's a resource to know about, it's not as important right now. Maybe right now, one of the considerations is home safety. Like maybe there needs to be some type of modification to make sure that she doesn't have to go up and down in the 2 floors, and having the master bedroom on the 2nd floor, and then the basement laundry is. So these kind of changes may be more of an immediate need for her. And I think that's where the personal one-to-one can unearth the real priorities for Alice. And then how do you actually navigate that then? Like, how do you make sure that you tap into that resource appropriately?
So one of my impressions of Care Wallet at the very beginning, and I've shared this with Robbie, is that I thought about it as a money management system. That word wallet made me think about it. And, you know, we see those elements actually in terms of this person's story represented in these pages. Reactions from the group though, and I've gone through the pages, I can flip back through them, but reactions to this level of information and what would need to happen next.
I actually like how RB just mentioned what isn't in here that they need. And I think that would be a good first question to maybe ask Alice here is there something that you thought you would get from Care Wallet that you didn't, and what might that be?
So, and as we've talked about, one of the things we've seen is that this is a woman who needs some support herself to be able to both understand what's going on, but also maybe to communicate with her family and with other professionals to get the support that they all need in this. So that behavioral coaching component.
I think also confidence to just, you know, she's hearing from her son, oh, dad sounds the same. He's fine. He's fine. But then to actually have someone to kind of be hearing her from a non-biased place and saying, you know, some of those things don't sound necessarily like they're normal, and maybe you do need that. Like, it kind of gives her maybe the confidence to then go and seek out like more physician support and more, you know, because I think for a long time, from my experience, I feel like the kids don't always get privy to what's going on. And then by the time they are clued in, it's almost too late, where like the help that they could have given is just, it's too late.
So the fact that Ronan was involved in at least the data entry part is a good thing, but the system actually prompting for and encouraging more family engagement could be a part of that. So we're down to our last 5 minutes, and I'd like to stay on time because this is, I think it's important. Plus, we all have evenings that we might want to, I know I'm going to go get a beer. But, you know, so how was this for you? Why do you think we did this?
I found it helpful. Just, it's kind of like going into a new job, even though I know what I do and I feel confident in my, but this is a little different. So this was a good way to help me think about what questions might I not think of as a social worker that, you know, some people with more medical type trainings would think of. And just kind of thinking about a case in general, how do we go forward? And I found it very helpful.
I agree.
Yeah, I would agree. Yeah. Reminds me of the old, the interdisciplinary teams.
Yeah.
We are now.
Yeah, so we're kind of like a mini PACE program here, Program for All-Inclusive Care of the Elderly. I don't even know if it exists anymore.
It does.
It does.
Unfortunately, not in Maine.
So let's say that she's gone through the system, she's entered the data, you've gotten a printout of the data. Is there anything else that Care Wallet can do to make your in-person follow-up with her as productive as possible. So Robbie has mentioned perhaps there's a way of having human touch early in the data entry component. But the next human touch is when you're going to present the list and really try to get to know her. So how do you manage that?
Can I add one more thing very quickly? The care plan that you've seen is what the platform is able to do today. The data collection process, there is a lot more information that's sitting there that we haven't been able to extract meaningfully yet. So there's a lot more around cognitive, around behavioral needs, around the social needs, all of those, that there's pieces of data that is sitting in the onboarding databases, but not necessarily always reflected in the care plan itself, because some of those are part of this sort of the nebulous, how is the relationship and what are the dynamics and the human elements of care.
And will,
Yeah.
if Bev is going to follow up with someone, or Robbie, will she be able to access that richness now, even though the system isn't necessarily prioritizing it?
Yeah.
Can she see it?
Yeah, we are working on getting care managers that access to the full onboarding that the user goes through. So there's information that is reflected in the care plan, and then there's information that is in the entry itself.
Mm-hmm.
And we are working on getting all care managers access to that for each of the users they're talking to.
Arabi, I'm trying to remember. I did my own onboarding a while ago, like playing around with it. Is there a place where someone could just like narratively write in like if you had like, this is my top problem, like this is the thing that is causing the most stress, or that, like some little blurb that would just really like help to clue in whoever is going in to make sure that they like ask that question?
Yes, so that's sitting in the data.
Okay.
A question around we have questions specifically around what makes them happy in this sort of caregiving experience. And then the other is what is their biggest challenge or burden.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great.
But the first piece that we always run into is the caregiver may not view themselves as a caregiver. So when we ask them the questions, we're already trying to shift their perspective a little bit and put that lens of you are a caregiver, but they, labels aside. That's the role you're sort of shifting into.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, a thought that I had along those lines is, could the system prompt and to activate the microphone on the computer, and a person just be given some prompts just to talk a little bit about their experience? Even just hearing the person talking can give you a feel for them, a human feel that the type data can't provide.
We are actually working on it. That's still under development. We have a little I don't want to call it a chat bot, but a little bit of an interactive chat, voice-based chat mechanism, but it's not ready yet.
Yeah. So there's, I think there's certainly a lot of great stuff here and opportunity to really make a difference. What I've gained from this conversation is, I think, a stronger appreciation of how the system flows, where I think it can still grow and improve. But I'm also very impressed with this group. You're all terrific. I thank you for giving your time and just being really open and honest with your perspectives. I'm sensitive to it's almost 8 o'clock. Any other final thoughts anyone would like to share?
I do have a question, more so than a thought, and this is more from the perspective of, as users come on board and we start collecting this information, in the context of what we did today, you obviously had the benefit of a well fleshed out case that was presented to you up front, so you're able to very quickly get to what are the pain points or issues. The one thing that I also wanted to kind of prompt all of you is sort of keeping that perspective in the care wallet scenario. You may have to review all of these different pieces before you can start gleaning out those. Okay, I'm getting to the gist of where the problem lies for this individual or for this couple. And that's a little bit of a discovery process right now, but just because the way the system asks questions, there are now no easy ways to raise some of these questions because some of them are also sensitive in nature that we cannot ask very directly.
Any thoughts in response to that? Or we all need to go get our beer or glass of wine or our soda water or
You know us well already.
all
I
right.
guess my just quick thought is it's kind of like with any job, you often have to do some sort of assessment, and you kind of learn the system and learn how to eventually, I mean, at first you might start following the questions and ask sort of interview style, and then as you get to know the system, you're able to better do it more conversational. And I think that's just something that'll come with time and as you continue to make improvements.
Yeah. Makes sense.
All right. Well, it's a real pleasure to get to know all of you, and thanks again. Robbie, would you stay on for a sec?
I will. And thank you all for taking the time. I know, especially Monday evening, not the best, but thank you. And we will circle back regarding how we're going to take this forward based off of all of the discussions we've had. And Tom and I are going to regroup a little bit and think of how we can make this a smoother process once we have caregivers coming through the Care Wallet onboarding process.
Sounds good.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Fantastic.
Thanks, everyone.
Okay.
Have a
Have a good
night.
evening.
Super session. Thanks, Tom. Thanks.
Bye,
everybody.
everyone.
Good night.
All right. We did it.
Yeah. Let me do this. Sorry, 1 second. Let me pause the recording. Or do you want me to continue recording? Is this something that you would?
Yeah, why not? Keep going. I mean, we might have some brain flashes that make it worthwhile. Allison, are you having trouble leaving us? Do you want Robbie to boot you out? Because she has the power as the host.
Maybe she is not realized that she's still on.
Yeah, if you just click in the upper right of her box.
I already removed. Yeah.
Gotcha. So I just saved the chat and sent it to you. So that we have the chat, which is, so what are your, did this do anything for you, or did it?
No. Yeah.
I hope it served some function.
Yes, no, it did. It did. I think a couple of things. It actually was very helpful for me to see all of the care managers in action in a way.
Yep.
Because I've known each one of them individually to a certain extent, some to a longer extent, others are relatively new. So for me, seeing how cohesively we can look at these cases, I think that in itself is very valuable.
Mhm.
And two, it also gave me a sense of some of the, in a way, what's working or what could work better through Care Wallet versus what are going to be real challenges that we need to figure out a different way to address.
Yeah.
And the way I'm looking at all of this is Care Wallet is just a way to get them started, other caregivers started, give them a chance to make observations on their own without anyone else influencing anything.
Right.
But then at the same time, once they start having these discussions with the care managers, they can be much more prepared. One, first of all, be prepared, because one of the things that I've noticed is, again, this came up before, people are not very good at talking about their problems or getting to the, what is it that's really bothering them, or how
That's
do
the
we
hard-
even, exactly. So this onboarding process at least makes them, while it is a bit tedious, it just gives them that extra chance to review something that they may never have thought about. And then come prepared for the care manager conversation. So that way, right at the beginning of the conversation, or right from the beginning, it's very productive for both of them. And they can quickly get to the details.
Yeah.
So I think there is benefit there. I'm just trying to figure out if there's even more benefit in actually hand-holding the caregiver through the onboarding process itself, meaning some of these tell me a little bit more kind of prompts can happen if a care manager is there live as they're onboarding.
Right. Well, when you activated the video feature, you got the offer of an AI component. I think this is something that Zoom is, I haven't used it yet, but I think that AI is taking the transcript and creating an intelligent summary in all likelihood. And so a different way of doing this, I'm sensitive to the cost involved for you. The human cost is going to be significant.
Yeah.
And I know you're not there there on the programming side yet, but if you had an actor record a welcome and kind of this is how to get the most out of Care Wallet. You might not think about yourself as a caregiver, but you have concern about somebody who's older that you care about, whether you are caring for them or not. And we're really here to try to help you sort it out.
Yeah.
So to make the most of this platform, we're going to give you, so if there's a way that we could shift it to voice prompts, where you open a page, this page is about asking you X, Y, and Z questions. Type in your answers as best you can, but at the end, I'm going to give you an opportunity to discuss your thoughts in this and express, and so allowing that person to actually talk to their computer.
Yeah.
But still do the core data entry too. I'm wondering it, but without a human. Let the computer in, but that provides you then with a spoken narrative that might be rich, but also all the data too.
Yes. No, absolutely. That's one of the things. And this is where I'm also trying to understand, again, putting a little bit more context around it. Ideally, somebody looking into Care Wallet would be coming to us because there's already a diagnosis, some type of medical prompt that has gotten them to the realization that their role in the family is changing to be more of a caregiver. So in that case, it's a little bit easier for us to take them through some of these observations and then let them talk like with the voice prompt as well. The challenge still is going to be that unless they get a somewhat of an interactive voice chat that builds on what they're sharing, because I don't think people voluntarily tell stories, or maybe some personalities do.
Some do, but yeah, you're right. No, many won't, and many won't know what to say.
Exactly.
It's just I think what we heard today, what I took from this is how critical the human piece is.
Yes.
So I don't want to beat a dead horse. I'm glad, and I'm tired. I'm ready to go. I'm ready to be done. So
now, actually, that's what I was going to say. This, to your point, the one of my aha moments earlier this year that led me to bringing care managers on was this, because initially I was thinking the tech can do a lot of heavy lifting, but that changed the game for me earlier this year when I realized the human element is really vital, which is why I'm combining both as opposed to just purely the human element. But then wherever the benefit of Care Wallet is this is just a starting, right? The care planning that they do is one component where the human touch is critical.
right.
But the ongoing care management and tracking and reporting of that, the tech can do. That doesn't need that human involvement. And there is a added benefit down the line to Care Wallet that simply cannot be provided by just one-to-one human interactions.
Well, and I think that's the empowered caregiver part.
Yeah.
Once the caregiver is empowered and has the scaffold and framework,
Yeah.
they can take charge.
Yeah.
And I think our story about Alice is that type of person. So yeah, I agree with you there. So So how would you like to proceed with digesting these data? Do you want to take the transcript and read it over and extract what you consider? I mean, how much do you want to pay me to do that, given what you're paying me hourly?
No, I was going to say, unfortunately, the transcript piece didn't work. So this is going to be a recording of the Zoom chat. Sorry, the Zoom, the whole thing, That's what I'm going to be having with this.
All right. Well, we will create a transcript. So there's a down and dirty way to do it.
Mhm.
We're going to take so you share with me the recording.
Yeah.
I know a trick to get you a transcript.
Oh, great. Then that makes it easy.
This transcript that we'll get will not know who's speaking. So it's going to be run on sentences, but it's better than nothing. Yeah,
Yes.
it's too bad that we didn't, because that's a big loss. But we do have the chat, and the chat shows each person's what they typed in. That's helpful.
Actually, that's what I'm looking to see if the chat automatically saves in this case, or if I need to actually prompt it into saving.
You have to save it. I already did and emailed it to you though, so it's saved. But if you go to the top of the chat, the little 3 dots, click on the dots and do save chat.
That's what I'm looking for, but it's out there.
Very top of the chat box. There you go.
Perfect. So
Let's stop recording. So why don't you cease